Hi everybody, how are you doing? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I wanted to say hello and talk a little bit about how things are going for all of you and share a little bit of this beautiful setting with y'all. And I'm wondering how you're doing and how things have been going for you. It is springtime, yay, it's May. I want to see if I can, is my finger in the way? It's beautiful up here. So, it's May. It's Taurus season. Taurus season is about the Aries is the seed, and Taurus is the roots. Like when it starts to sprout and start to settle in to the ground. And with that, there's certain boundaries and limitations and things that need to be set into place in order to set those roots down. Sometimes there's stones in the way. Sometimes there's not enough water, not enough sunshine, or whatever it is. It has to be balanced. Sorry, my allergies are kicking in. Don't eat too much of that, okay, buddy? So I wanted to just talk a little bit about Taurus and how Uranus, the great change maker, the sudden change maker, just happens to be changing signs. It's totally random, okay? Totally random that it's changing signs into Taurus during Taurus season and during exactly on a new moon in Taurus. So that's auspicious. That's just you can't avoid knowing that there's a bigger picture here. There's a bigger vision. There's a bigger creation kind of story coming into being right now. And with that comes a lot of anxiety too. And if we don't know what's happening within ourselves and what's going to happen next, it can create a lot of anxiety. And there is great changes happening, but also there's that time right before a major change, and that's almost the most anxiety producing time, when change is coming and you can kind of feel it stirring, but it hasn't quite taken form yet, or you don't know how it's going to look. It can create a lot of anxiety. Sorry, I feel like I'm squinting, so maybe I will put my hat on. I was trying not to wear my hat all the time when I film, but it makes sense when you're outside because then you can actually see. So, Taurus, seeds, Aries time, Taurus, the roots. And so Uranus in Aries has been there for the last 7 years. The last time Uranus was in Taurus was 1934 to 1942. I don't have any of my notes with me, but I think that's when it was. So it's been a good long time. And if you don't know about that time period, that was also the time, there's other players in place here. But that was also a time of the Great Depression, economic collapse. So if you're feeling just weird and things are shifting, I can't tell you how many people are talking about financial issues right now, or worry. Even if you're doing okay now, worry about the future, worry about what it's going to look like. And then definitely with the stock market and different things, I've been talking about this, but this is all Taurus, very personal finances is what Taurus rules. So Taurus is also represented by Venus, and Venus is energy and the heart energy, and money comes into that equation. Okay, so how we give and receive energy, how we give and receive money, because money is just energy, right? So we're restructuring Taurus. We're looking at our resources. We're resourcing things. We're looking at where we can change our belief system and our ideas and our ideology around finances and cultural beliefs around the way things are, the way things have to be. And so it's a really exciting time. But again, like I said, it's creating a lot of anxiety for people. So when does this change happen? It happens at the new moon. Well, when is the new moon? The new moon is on Tuesday, on the 15th. But this is almost the more stressful time, is when it's in 29 degrees of Aries, because 29 degrees of Aries is the critical degree, we call it. Paco, come here. It's a last degree of a sign. So there's 30 degrees in a sign, and the 29th degree is where we notice it's the master test of how you've been doing with Uranus and Aries. And so it's been for the last 7 years. So thinking about the last 7 years, and I just did this with Chiron, and it's these major players here, and the way we relate to others, our personal boundaries and relating are tied up into this. So looking at the last 7 years, looking at the way that you've thought about money and your personal resources, your boundaries, but also Aries is about your identity and shifts to your identity. So we're really looking at that for the last 7 years. And then going forward, we'll notice changes to our personal plans. Sorry, I kind of messed that up. And so looking back to the last 7 years, looking at your identity, what changes have happened in the last 7 years? I mean, obviously a 7-year time period is a long time. Of course, changes happen, but around your identity and your awareness, like certain things coming into awareness, like aha moments about where you need to make change and where you don't want to spend a lot of your time. So Uranus is how time moves differently, and how time, it's not as linear as we think. So different connecting, different synchronicities. You might notice a lot more synchronicities in this last degree coming up, and then moving into the next few weeks as well. This is also, if you've noticed, just things shifting on planet Earth, the relationship between Gaia, the Earth, and Uranus. They've had kind of a treacherous relationship, and so we notice different structural things happening and shifting on planet Earth when Uranus is moving around. So we might notice more than what's already happening, which is earthquakes and volcanic activity on the Big Island of Hawaii. There have been a few earthquakes in California, and it's definitely just to be aware of having all your resources, because it's like restructuring how we develop resources, how we think of our boundaries and our stability as people and as communities. Changes to that, changes happening. So in the next 7 years, we'll definitely notice changes to our communities and our systems. Also looking at, it's the most feminine sign. So it is a feminine sign, and it's really bringing about change of the feminine, change of the way that it's viewed, changes to how we think of mothers, how we think of mothering. It's the womb space. It's also, so it's the womb and the cervix, which is connected to the womb, and then it's also the throat and the jaw, and how we express ourselves and how we express our boundaries and express our limitations, but also our abilities. And Paco's going crazy. So you might notice things coming up around just the expression of yourself, an expression of your uniqueness and your strengths as being a unique person. And I talk about like how if you have more placements of if you have more uranium, if you have more of Uranus in your chart, so how would you have more? Well, if you have a lot of aspects to your natal Uranus, if it's at your midheaven or at your rising, or at any of the 4 points, the 4 directions. So we have the east, west, south, and north. If it's at any of those directions, it's going to be a bigger influence, because then it's also going to be squaring and opposing those other 3 directions, okay? And then also what sign it's in, what house placement. And then if you have a Aquarius, because Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. So if you have an Aquarius rising, if you have Aquarius, a lot of planets in Aquarius in your chart, or again, it's your rising or your midheaven, that's going to be big too. So people that have more Uranus placements, stronger placements in their chart, are going to be feeling this more. But also, we kind of know how to roll with this energy. Like for people that don't have a lot of Uranus placements, they might not be feeling this as much. But also, even if they're just feeling it slightly, it's going to feel bigger to them than not, because they're not familiar with this tower energy. And Uranus is the tower card in tarot, and Uranus also rules astrology. It's that kind of wacky, weird energy that just works. It works, but it's definitely weird. It's the planet of weird. It has a weird orbit. It's just the planet of weird. There's no other words for it. So this is what's happening, is that it's shifting on May 15th, but we're in the critical degree, the last degree of Aries. And so we just want to be aware of where Aries, the last degree of Aries, is in our chart, where the first few degrees of Taurus is in our chart, and if you have any planets there. Also, if you have any planets that are going to be in the last degrees of a cardinal sign or the first degrees of a fixed sign, then you're also going to be feeling this more, okay? So this is for everybody. This is for the next 7 years. It's a 7 to 8 year orbit, and not orbit, but move through the sign. But it's really, when we call it the ingress, when it first moves into a sign, because we're going to feel it more potently. Typically, not always, there are earth shifts and changes when this happens. So be prepared and don't be scared, because like even what's happening in Hawaii, it's like, some people are losing their homes, and I really, pray for those people. But it's also like these shifts and changes are necessary for us to remember what to be grateful for and what's really most important in our lives, right? So just being prepared. Taurus rules food systems, our food. And so, in general, it's just good to be aware of being grateful for our food, being grateful for our food coming from the earth, maybe growing your own food this spring, maybe starting a garden. It's a great time to do that. And I'm going to do a house by house for this Uranus change of signs. And I'm going to talk about the new moon in a different post, so you can look for that in the next couple days. I feel like I just want to focus on Uranus right now. If you're curious to read more about Uranus, I have a blog post on it, Changing Signs to Taurus. And again, it's really important for you to know just where this is happening in your chart, most importantly. And then I think it's helpful to know just where your Uranus is in your natal chart. So where it was when you were born. Generationally, it's a 7-year cycle. Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Good. Stay here, Puckle. Talk. So it's a 7-year change. So for people born, I'm not going to do years, but like I know my generation is Uranus and Scorpio. Okay, so you want to know what, and that is the exaltation. Exalted? It's exalted in Scorpio. So knowing where that is in your chart is important. And then, it might be in something else. Probably is in something else if you're watching this. So you want to know where yours is and what house it's in, and look for changes in that house, and then also the house where Uranus is changing into Taurus, the first few degrees of Taurus in your chart, okay? So Uranus changing signs from your 12th. I'm going to start with the 12th to the first house. So if you have late degrees, Aries in your 12th, and Aries in your 12th, and then first few degrees of Taurus in your first house. And just so you guys know, it might be the same house. So it can be confusing because, let me just say this first, is that it can be confusing because it might be changing signs, but it might be in the same house. So I will talk about that after I go through the houses. Okay, so first the second house, if you're having that change. And if you do whole sign houses, then it will definitely be changing. Okay, so either way. So from 12th to 1st, and then changing signs as well. And going from identifying, if you're going from the 12th to the 1st, identifying yourself as a spiritual being, as someone who's connected to source, from, as it transits to your first in Taurus, is around maintaining and structuring your boundaries so that you're not spiritually bypassing, so that you're not over giving, so that you're not oversharing, so that you're not not receiving, working on receiving as a human, working on identity, identifying yourself as a person that has strong boundaries and health and well-being. Okay, so from first to second house. So if you have Aries in the last few degrees in the first house, and then it's moving to second house of first degrees of Taurus. Why did I decide to do this? Shifts from identifying yourself as a very strong person and a very quick to act person that can kind of take charge, moving into recognizing that changes need to be made around your finances and maybe not rushing things, maybe slowing a little bit down. If you're just joining us, I'm doing a house by house of the change of Uranus into the signs, from Aries to Taurus. Okay, so second house is personal finance house. It's Taurus's house, so it's like double whammy, right? So definitely being aware of your personal finances and your boundaries in your personal finances. Also, yeah, just like your security as a human and not needing other people, like really standing on your own in your identity and in your personal finances. Okay, so second to third house is changes from identifying yourself as a person that can have good boundaries, to communicating and sharing and speaking and teaching maybe a little bit other people about these things. So you might notice there's changes and shifts happening around being called to express yourself more, speak about these things more, even if it's as simple as like, you know, being part of the PTA or joining like a volunteer thing. But you're definitely going to be noticing speaking more and changes to the way that you see yourself as a communicator. Third to fourth is identity as maybe even a sporty person, or a person that is healthy body and initiating around movement and communication and being a team player. Changes to that where you've been in the last 7 years, or not for 7 years you've been doing that, but maybe you're noticing shifts and changes. To the fourth house, Taurus in the fourth house can get a little stubborn around the house. So you might notice changes happening to your idea of home, to your structures in the home. Like you might be noticing like it's time for a remodel, or if it's time for like to move all together, or it's time to live in a tiny house. So there, you might notice that. And there can be, the thing about Taurus is Taurus can be so stubborn and hard to move. When Uranus comes into Taurus, it's sudden changes that are just clear that they need to be made. There's no more dragging your feet. There's no more making excuses. There's no more, but maybe I can try this, or maybe this will happen. No, it's just changes need to be made. Did you find a stick? Changes need to be made, so they just will. And so this is the thing about Taurus energy, is it wants to move slow, and Uranus breaks it up like just really quickly and really fast. So there's no avoiding that, but there is, if you drop it, but there is going with the flow and noticing and noticing where you're feeling resistance or where you're feeling stuck, and really just noticing, like yesterday I was talking about on my Instagram live, is just like, where can I welcome change? Where can I be a welcome conduit of change? Because change is so good. Change is so good, right? It's such a good mantra to have. Where can I welcome change for the highest good? Because change is in the highest good. And where can I welcome this highest good change in my life? And we're all doing it. It's not unique. If you're having a hard time, if you are struggling with changes, it's pretty common right now. A lot of people struggling with changes, okay? Shoot, where am I at? Fourth to fifth? Okay. Fourth house. Aries in the fourth house. Eek. So it changes around the identity in the home. The identity in the home, but you have to drop it, buddy. No, I'm not going to do that. Okay. So changes to your identity in the home arena, or also with family. Moving into, creativity. Oh, I'm so excited if you have this placement. Moving into creating, because fifth house is creativity, and Taurus is like stable creativity. So like pottery and working with the earth, or maybe like some cool landscaping thing that you're doing, something that's calling to you around creating change. You're in pain. I'm not going to throw that for you anymore now. So yeah, creating change in terms of your creativity, your creations. I don't know how old you are. I don't know if you're thinking about having babies, or maybe you already did, but if you're fertile, if you could have babies, you want to be careful, because this is a time where you could, maybe you want to, but just be aware, because fifth house is children, and Taurus is super fertile. So fertile ground for that. If you're a guy, also like being aware where you're planting your seeds, you know what I'm saying? So fifth to sixth house, Aries, double fire, lots of changes to your creativity, your creations, your will, and the way that you see the world. To sixth house, Taurus, is sixth house Taurus can be so freaking immovable, like so immovable, and really shocked by change, and doesn't do well. So if you have this placement, it's time to work with me. Like, that's just about all I have to say about that. But like, finding ways to have everyday ritual that can make you feel stable and can make you feel like things aren't changing too much, even though they're going to be changing a lot. Sixth house Aries. Sixth house Aries is a great placement. And so you might have been noticing, or you might have noticed changes to the way that you energize yourself, the way that you get healthy, the way that you work out, the way that you connect with your body, connect with your mind. And then moving into seventh house is how you're going to bring those stable changes to relationship, how you can welcome change in terms of the way you see relationships, the way you see partnerships, the way you see business partnerships. And that's very exciting. Seventh house Aries and Uranus in seventh house is changes and quick shifts to partnership. Aries in the seventh house, I'm going to say, is not the best placement. It's an opposition. It's an opposition placement because it is that house is ruled by Libra, and you have a very feminine, even though it's not super feminine, it does have some masculinity, Libra does, with this very masculine, just like trudge forward, like I know the way, follow me. And so changes during these last 7 years probably have been around, just the way you initiate things and trying to find more balance, and shifts and changes to the way that you see relationships. When it's moving into your eighth house Taurus. Eighth house Taurus is, again, another opposition things, because it's Taurus is in Scorpio's house, and Scorpio is the opposite sign. Okay, so if you have this placement, it can be a little confusing because it's the building and then the letting it burn and letting it go and letting it die. And this can be confusing to people around you. You might not feel very supported. Again, another great placement to work with me, because it can just feel isolating to have this placement. Because people see you working so hard on something, and then there's certain times in your life where you're just going to have to let it go. And during these last 7 years, possibly, or these coming into these 7 years, 'cause I'm talking about Taurus now, just being aware of what your support system is and who are the people that support this kind of, I don't want to say odd, it is kind of an oddness in the way that you transform and the way that you grow. And so you're going to need a good support system. And it's really in the first few weeks that you'll notice this the most. Whew, I have this placement. If you're wondering, like, oh man, this doesn't sound very fun. I'm hearing myself talk about it, and it doesn't sound very fun. And so, feeling not understood, but like certain changes need to happen to the way that you transform, and you see yourself, and you see your transformation. And it also has to do with other people's resources, family resources, things like that. Okay. So, Aries in the eighth house. So now we're like moving forward to the next thing. Aries in the eighth house is, transformations and changes. So for the last, 7 years, if you've had this placement, it's changes to identity, changes to the way that you transform, but quick shifts and awareness to where you could do it better, where you could improve, where you can, lean on other people and not just lean on yourself, like really finding that, the resources in the community. So that's actually not as bad of a placement. And then Taurus in the ninth house. Taurus in the ninth house is shifts and quick changes to the way that you learn, the way that you expand your mind. This is actually a beautiful placement because it means with Uranus moving there, it means that you will have these Uranus is the great awakener, the great expander of the mind. And so it works really well with Sag energy. And so this is the house of Sagittarius, ninth house. And so it's just quick shifts and making sure that you have an open mind, making sure that you're open to, like, if this travel opportunity opens up for you, if this opportunity opens up for you to go back to school, or this opportunity opens up for you to teach a class or to do something like that, just be open to change and whatever's in your highest good. Okay. So ninth house, Aries in the ninth house, with Uranus moving through there the last 7 years. So this is, again, that expanded mind, the mind, but with Aries here, it's a lot more fire. It's double fire, again, another double fire house. And so it shifts and changes to your identity around being a teacher. Like, you are just a teacher. And so it shifts and changes to that process. So if you had this placement for the last 7 years, you might have come into teaching, or maybe it looks different. Maybe you're like, I'm not a teacher at all. But then I could look into your life and be like, well, what about this thing that you do here on the side, this coaching gig you have, like in the basketball team or whatever, and you're really helping people expand their mind. In, like teaching them basketball. You know, it can be totally unrelated, but you're really affecting change for people, okay? So changes to that happen in the last 7 years. Now you're moving into the 10th house, which is your work in the world. If you have Taurus, Aries, if you have Uranus moving into your 10th house, and Uranus is in Taurus, these next 7 years are going to be about changes and shifts to your work in the world, and how all of these past 7 years have been strengthening you and sustaining you into having better boundaries in your, my phone is blowing up, into having better boundaries in your work in the world, having better structural systems in place for your work in the world, especially around finances. Like you might get you might get a grant to do something, or you might apply for, something to like a loan or something to really strengthen your work in the world. Something. So that's exciting. Big changes and shifts in your work in the world. Okay. Aries in the 10th house, though. Aries in the 10th house. Paco, you're driving me crazy. Aries in the 10th house is a self-starter, so most likely you have your own business, not always. And so if that's the case, you had changes in awareness around what other aspects of your work need your attention and need your kind of like aggressiveness, or like your kind of that sales. It may be like, this is a good placement for a salesperson, like very heady and like can move things forward. So you might notice shifts, or had noticed in the last 7 years, shifts around that. And Taurus into the 11th house. This is taking way longer. I'm never going to do this again, just by the way. It's so long and ridiculous. Taurus in the 11th house is, you can be a stubborn person in community and have a hard time seeing other people's perspectives. So you might be getting some major lessons these next 7 years on collective shifts that can honor people's individuality and their eccentricities. So this might be something that comes up for you the next 7 years. And again, like this is such a big amount of time, but why I'm doing it is because for the first few months, you're probably going to, first few weeks especially, you're going to be noticing it the most. So just be aware. Shifts in the way that you are seen in community, or the way people see you, kind of sudden shifts. And then if you have, did I do Aries in the 10th house? I did. So where am I at now? So Aries in the 11th house, if you've had that for the last 7 years, it's like shifts and changes to your identity in the community, but also being a leader, because Aries is a leader, and so leading the pack. And so like you might have stepped into some new role in the community in that way, or it might be coming in this last little bit of Uranus in Aries. So being open and aware about that, and also being aware of like where you can get aggressive, because Taurus, so Aries is the ram and Taurus is the bull. They can both be a little bit like aggressive or stubborn. There's definitely, with both of them, there's a little bit of that. So just being aware of that as well. This in the 11th house. Okay. I ended with Aries in the 12th house. So Taurus in the 12th house. Taurus in the 12th house is, and so this is where you're going if you have Uranus moving into your 12th house in Taurus. Another great placement for working with me, by the way, because the 12th house is all the unseen, and it is the deep waters of Pisces world, and it's unseen, and it's the lower consciousness. So it's not lower level consciousness. It's the unconscious or the subconscious, and Aries is the conscious. So when you have Taurus, which is boundaries and stubborn and wants to know how things work and wants to have a really, they're pretty practical, and it's an earth placement. So having the deepest waters and then the earth placement can be shifts and changes quickly to beliefs that you had. You probably, if you have this placement, if you have Taurus in the 12th house, I'm just going to guess and say that you're not into like esoteric as much, or you're not into the unseen, or you're kind of maybe more judgmental about that. And so you might notice quick shifts to that. You might have great awakenings where sudden things come into your awareness, or you might even get like past life memories. Like there's certain things that are going to shift in these next few weeks. And that's why it's a great time to work with someone who does past life healing and esoteric, all the esoteric stuff. I'm all about it. So, okay, that I think wraps it up. I think I did all of the houses. So what I was going to say is say you have it the same. So, okay, so say you have, so for me, I think this is true. I'm not sure because I don't really know, but I think I have Aries in the 8th house. I have Aries 8th house, and then also, so if you're not doing whole sign houses, and then I also have Taurus in the 8th house. So it kind of cradles both of them, both of those signs. And so when you have that happening, you can just listen to, so say I did 12th house, just listen to both of those, because the energy is different even though it's the same house, because the energy is different because it's a different sign. So for example, when I was talking about, Aries in the 8th house does better than Taurus in the 8th house. And so that's what I have. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that's exciting because things are just about to get a little bit more rocky. So it's just being aware of which one I said maybe might be a little bit even easier placement and which one might be a little bit harder. And at the same time, I'm just guessing. It's totally just like what's coming through. And so you might be having a really easy time. I would love to hear from you. Either way, if you're having an easier time, if you're having a harder time, please comment below and let me know how you're doing this week. And make your list of things places where you're welcoming change, where you're open to change, where change would be good for you, because change is always good for us. And yeah, I think that it's a great time for all of us to just stay aligned, spend some time in nature, breathe, know that this is all temporary. Everything is temporary. Everything's temporary, and lean into friendships, lean into people that you trust, lean into community. Don't try to do it all alone. Uranus is sudden changes. Drive safely, drive aware, drive in full consciousness. And, likewise, walk that way. Yesterday I was watching a guy on his phone walking, and he dropped his pencil into the street and almost got hit by a car because he was not watching. And as we know, I am not perfect. Neither are you. But we can all be a little bit more aware in these coming weeks and stay in the vibration of love and acceptance of change, and knowing that, again, all of this is temporary. Everything. The good, the bad, the ugly, it's all temporary. Have a beautiful week, guys. Bye.